Hey everybody, it's Kaitlyn, your geeky girlfriend. We're back in the kitchen again today. It's Saturday morning, and I'm making some of my little, I call them oatmeal balls, but otherwise known as Oatmeal Energy Bites. Some people call them protein balls, whatever you like to call them. So I'm going to be mixing up a batch of what I consider original recipe oatmeal balls. There are lots of different varieties you can do with this. You can add lots of different ingredients to them and make them. There are tons of recipes where you use cocoa powder instead of, or you put some cocoa powder in it and make like chocolate ones. There's like chocolate hazelnut ones where they're made with Nutella instead of peanut butter. So there are lots of variations of this. I'm making, like I said, what I would consider original recipe today. And I remembered that I wanted to film this video and I forgot to show you guys the first couple of steps. So first you're going to start with oats, and the recipe calls for 1 cup. I'm doubling my recipe today because I'm trying to not only make breakfast for today, but I'm trying to make a whole week's worth of these to eat for breakfast next week. And so we're going to start with your oats, just plain rolled oats. These came from Aldi. You can use Quaker, whatever brand. So I actually doubled that. We put 2 cups in. Then we did 1 cup of peanut butter of your choice. You can do crunchy, you can do smooth. We have smooth. And I did not measure at all, but if this is your first time making it, I would recommend measuring just so that way when you're trying to get that right consistency of forming the balls, then you can kind of get a sense of what works. And then we did, since I'm doubling it, a 1/2 cup of honey, which again, I didn't measure. I just finished off the container that I had because it was about that much. So I've made these a lot. The flavor really doesn't change regardless of how much or how little of something you put in. And that brings us to our next ingredient, which is 1 tablespoon of vanilla. So again, we're going to double that to 2. And yeah, like I said, we're not really measuring today. We're just dumping. The flavor really doesn't change that much, and your calorie content or your carb content isn't really going to change that much either by adding an extra tablespoon of vanilla. Speaking of carbs and caloric content, the recipes that we're going to show on here from now on or for the next 10 or so weeks will be more protein, a little bit less carbs, or ways to get like choosing healthier carb options, because unfortunately we have come down with gestational diabetes. So we are really honing in on the healthy eating and trying to make some different choices. So again, these protein balls do have, or the oatmeal balls do have a lot of carbs with the oats, but we also have that peanut butter in there, which is going to give us some protein, and we're trying to get some fiber as well. So we've got the natural sweetener from the honey and the vanilla, and we are also going to put some chia seeds in a minute. If you have flax seed, those work a little bit better in terms of fiber, but either way. So we have a 1/2 cup, because I'm doubling, or a 1/4 cup of shaved coconut. If you're allergic, you can swap it out for something else. You could probably even do like mini marshmallows or something. And I do prefer the unsweetened coconut just because it's the more natural flavor. You can obviously do the sweetened as well. All right, next is 1 cup, because we're doubling, of chocolate chips. You can use any flavor. I've used dark chocolate before. I've used milk chocolate before. These are semi-sweet, and I'm using the minis. So you can really do any kind of chocolate. You can do white chocolate if you want. You can do butterscotch. Literally anything. You can customize this recipe. The base for this recipe is the honey, the peanut butter, and the oats, because that's what makes them stick together. And then the dry ingredients you can kind of swap out. But you just have to have a good ratio of the peanut butter and the honey, which is why we did 1 cup to a 1/2 cup, just to make them kind of sticky. So we are able to form, form the balls, or in today's case, we're actually going to try to make them into bars for the first time. Now, this is chia seeds. Again, we're doubling this recipe, so it calls for a 1/4 cup. I am going to go ahead and commit to the full the full 1/2 cup, because we're trying for fiber here, and chia seeds are known for fiber. They have 8 grams of dietary fiber with only 8 grams of carbohydrates, And then they have a 5 grams of protein per serving. The serving size is 2 tablespoons. So we just got all of that, obviously multiplied. But when you do the math and once you mix it all up, you're going to have that in about 2 of these balls or so. So then what we're going to do is we're going to mix this all up. Now, so those are the only dry ingredients. So you have your rolled oats, 1 cup at least, peanut butter of your choice, or Nutella or almond butter, cashew butter, whatever your preference. You just need some sort of a nut butter that's thick. We're going for protein here, so we did go with traditional peanut butter. And for everybody, this has 7 grams of protein and 8 grams of carbohydrates. So one of the things with gestational diabetes is trying to balance out the carb to protein ratio. So our oats, just for everybody's reference, your oats in one serving is a half a cup. So we've got 2 cups of oats here. Half a cup has 27 grams of carbohydrates, but only 5 grams of protein. However, they do have 4 grams of dietary fiber and 1 gram of soluble and 2 grams of insoluble fiber with no sugar. So still a healthy choice. You're just getting the majority of your carbs. So we need to balance out not only the carbs in the oats, but the carbs in the protein as well, or the carbs in the peanut butter. And this has 7 grams of peanut butter per 2 tablespoons serving. Again, we have a cup in here. So if you divide that up, you're going to get about a serving of peanut butter in 2 oatmeal balls, or if we're making them into bars, about 1 bar. So pretty good balance. Then you have your honey. Honey, for reference, is 17 grams of carbohydrates. It is a natural sweetener. So, they actually, when you're pregnant and, in fertility and you're trying to monitor your sugar, things like fruit and honey that are natural, all natural sweeteners, are approved. Like, we're not everything in this, there's no additional added sugar. It's just 17 grams of natural sugar. So, you can't stress yourself out too much about the sugar because you'll drive yourself insane. Our chocolate chips, we have, there are 8 grams of added sugars in here. Total sugar, so the only sugar that's in a chocolate chip is added, but there are 10 grams of carbs, not a lot of protein. But that's okay. We put the chocolate chips in there for a little bit of sweetness. And then we already went over the chia seeds. And then your coconut has 2 grams of carbohydrates. So actually not a ton. And there's 2 grams of dietary fiber in this and 0 grams of added sugar. So coconut is actually quite good. So what we were saying was you got to put all this in here. The only wet ingredient is the vanilla. And I guess you could say the honey. We are going to stir this up and mix it all together. But what I have found is a lot of the time, this is just easier to do with your hands. I will mix it gently with a spatula, and then I just get in there with my hands because it just is a lot easier to get the peanut butter to kind of evenly disperse with the dry ingredients. We also doubled the recipe today, so there's a lot more peanut butter and a lot more honey. And what's good about a recipe like this is considered no bake. So if I would not have filmed this video, these would probably be almost done by now. So what we're going to do after we get them all mixed up and you get the consistency that you like, you actually have to chill these for at least 20 minutes before you can try to mold them into balls. Or like I said today, we're going to try for the first time and make them into bars. So I'm actually just going to flatten them out on a cookie sheet, so that way I can cut them and kind of make them into homemade granola bars. I've never tried that before, but I just, in the spirit of trying something different. And if I'm taking these for a breakfast for myself, I will pack 4 to 5 of the oatmeal bites. Usually I eat 2 to 3 of them, and then I have 2, but I just pack in case I get extra hungry. They make a good snack. Okay, actually, the consistency is turning out pretty good. So, like I said, I do a rough mix with a spatula or a spoon. Then I go in just with my hands and mush it all together so that way we do get that night. You want a thick consistency that can be molded, especially if you're going to try and roll them into bites. If you're putting them on a sheet pan, like making them bars, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You could probably, like, we could probably put these on the sheet right now, but I'm still going to try and give them a little bit of a mix. So yeah, you're going to mix it all up and then chill for 20 minutes, and then you can mold them, form them, or just eat them after you let them chill. Yeah, normally these take me about 30 minutes to make a batch of. And typically they do, even with the single batch, they tend to last me about a week if I make them into bites. But since we are going with bars this time, I wanted to double the recipe because I knew inherently I was probably going to, you know, 1 bar would be the equivalent of like 3 or so bites. And like I was mentioning, you can use flaxseed. The recipe that I originally started using in college did call for flaxseed, but I don't have any flaxseed right now, so we're just using what we have, which is chia. And when you're done mixing, you should have like a decent brick loaf dough ball of your mixture. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and chill these just because my hands are a little bit warm. And so we're going to chill these before we set them out so that way they can be nice and firm when you go to eat them. Because you want them to be like, you know, you want to be able to eat them without it falling apart like a Nutri-Grain bar. And that's the consistency that we're going for, is like a sticky, chewy bar. So we're going to wash my hand really quick. Okay, so we're going to put these in the fridge, like I said, about 20 minutes. And I'm going to eat like an apple really quick, just as a little morning snack. You know, maybe not a great choice. It is a quick carb, but these are where my protein is going to come from. So we just have to wait for these to chill. And I'm going to run out. I have an errand to run, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And then when we come back home, we will put these onto a tray and then, or just decide to roll them and eat them. So yeah, so we will be back to see how they ended up. So it's been well over 20 minutes. We have not quite made it out to our errand yet, but we are ready to go to the errand. So we've got this like loafy piece, and I'm just going to flatten this out into a pan. And actually, I think what we're going to do, instead of like flattening it out and instead of forming it into balls, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to take a small handful and we're just going to flatten it out ourselves. Make it sort of like cookies instead of the ball shape. So this is what we're going for. Like little mini granola bars is what we're going for. And I have a container lined with parchment paper, and we're just going to do that with the whole thing. Like I said, this is the first time that I've made them into little bars, but I just wanted to change. Didn't really want to deal with rolling them up. So I'm going to see, normally when I make a single, I can get at least 12 to 14 balls or bites out of that recipe. Or out of that batch. So I'm curious to see, since we're making them like flatter and almost more like mini granola bars, how many we'll be able to get. You know, when you're flattening them into little mini bars, you can make them you can put a little bit more of the mixture, because sometimes when I make the bite ones, sometimes they're like massive. So it's not a 1 bite and done. It's more of a 2 to 3 bites. But that's a personal preference. Like you can make them, I would say I'm getting about a little bit more than a tablespoon of the mixture. And then I'm just literally flattening it. I think the alternate way to do this is before you chill it, put it on the baking sheet or in a container lined with parchment paper first. Then you could cut it into bars and you could make sure that they're all the same length. I don't know if that would necessarily save you any time one way or the other. So I could have rolled them. I just want to see if this is any better. And sometimes I struggle with storing the bite ones because it's hard to find a container that can hold them. And so I'm like, well, at least if I make them this way, then they'll be flat and we can probably fit them all in one container. But yeah, so I'll show you guys this one, what it looks like, so you can see how we have all the ingredients in one little bar. This one's a little bit thicker, but I'll also show you the consistency. So here's what it looks like. You can see the coconut in there. You can see the chocolate chips. The chia seeds are all mixed in as well. We've got the oats, and then the peanut butter and the honey are what give it kind of a sticky consistency to be able to stick together. And that's why you have to chill it before, because otherwise it just all crumbles and you're left with just like a dry mess. And like I said, if you were making these for kids, you could make them really small. Like this would be like a kid-sized one. Or you can make them that size and just, eat a couple more of them. So they're all kind of different sizes. I'm trying. And that's usually what happens when I roll them. Also, they end up, some of them are really big. Some of them are really small. But I decided to just wait for them to chill before I went out for my errands, because then I can take a couple of them with me and not be tempted to get something while I'm out. So in this video, we can also talk a little bit about the gestational diabetes diagnosis, how we got there. Honestly, to be completely honest, I don't know how we got here because my blood pressure and my weight have been fine throughout the entire pregnancy, but that is why it's called gestational diabetes. It can just come on during pregnancy. Thinking about the differences that the body goes through. Obviously I have more weight on my body. So far I've gained about 23 pounds. So far, well, right about 25 pounds or so. And as I'm filming this video, I am 29 weeks, 5 days pregnant. So I've gained a little bit less weight than is recommended. It's recommended that you gain about 1 pound a week until the 3rd trimester, or at least that's what my reading has led me to. And then in the 3rd trimester, because the baby is gaining weight more rapidly, and the baby's main goals are just to grow, then you, as the mom, gain a little bit more weight in the last few weeks as the baby continues to gain weight, because right now the weight has just been in the uterus growing, food intake, all of that. And once we get into the 3rd trimester, some of the weight actually becomes they always say blame it on the baby. But anyway, so my weight and blood pressure have been within normal limits the entire pregnancy. And even now, still within normal limits. So I did my 1-hour glucose tolerance test. Before that test, you don't have to fast. And you can go about your day as normal. Now, a little bit about my day. I have talked about this a little bit on the page, but not in so much detail. But I am a teacher by trade and I'm an intervention specialist. So I do kind of make my own schedule, but what that means is I have to plan around when my students are in lunch. And sometimes that means that I'm seeing a student during 2nd grade lunch, but then I'm also seeing a student during 3rd grade lunch and 4th grade lunch. And by the time there's actually no students left to see, it's 2 o'clock or so. Now, I am that person who eats in front of her students. I do that frequently, regularly. They're used to seeing that. And the beauty washing my hands again. The beauty of what I do is that I can do that without, if I was a general education teacher with a classroom of 18 to 20 students, I wouldn't be able to do that. But what ends up happening is I often unintentionally skip meals, or I eat at like really random hours. It takes me a long time to get through my meals. I'm a slow eater anyway, but it takes me a long time to get through my meals. So on the day of the glucose tolerance test, I am pretty sure I had skipped lunch that day. So right before I went into the appointment, I had a snack. And now looking back, I honestly can't remember what I had, but if I had to guess, it was something a little bit sugary, maybe an apple, an orange, maybe a few candies or something like that. Just something that I had quick. So I was like, okay, let me just eat a snack really quick because I knew I was going to be getting blood. Then they gave me the glucose drink, and of course that is high in sugar. I did have the orange flavor. It wasn't terrible. Some people don't like orange. It was not terrible. It was fine. But you have to drink it in 5 minutes. So obviously that's a lot of sugar that goes into your bloodstream. Well, unfortunately for me, that test came back elevated, so I was referred to the 3-hour glucose tolerance test, which you have to fast. And again, dummy me, the night before, I had a sugary snack, pretty close to before bedtime, like within the hour of going to bed. And when you sleep, your body does not, like the pancreas is already moving slow because of pregnancy. There's, everything's cramped in there. It's processing for 2 people. So the pancreas is already slowed down. But then I ate sugar really close to before bed, fasted, got up and drank, they took my blood and I had to drink a more concentrated glucose drink because when you go for the second one, they give you actually more sugar. And so drank that one and I felt really sick after. So because you were fasting and I hadn't ate, I did feel really nauseous, like more nauseous than I felt in a very, very long time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we got about 12 of these little oatmeal cookies, mini granola bars, whatever, while we're on this topic. So I go through, and when you do the glucose tolerance test, they have your baseline fasting, the 1 hour after glucose drink, 2 hours, and 3 hours after glucose drink. And in order to be diagnosed with gestational diabetes, 2 of the 4 of those readings, your blood sugar has to be elevated in some way, shape, or form. And my first 2 were elevated. Again, I had a sugary snack before I went to bed the night before. Not a good idea. Then they do the glucose drink, which adds sugar into your bloodstream. My other 2 readings were within normal limits. So do I really have gestational diabetes? Unsure, because I feel like my results might have been a little skewed, but regardless, we're just going to follow the directions. So I've started monitoring a little bit closely, trying to get more protein, balance protein with carbs. Like if I know I'm going to have a carb, for example, I just had an apple. I had some peanut butter left on my spoon from when we were making these, and I just scooped that onto my apple and ate, maybe a teaspoon worth of peanut butter to my small little apple. And I was referred to maternal fetal medicine and a diabetic educator to monitor the rest of my pregnancy. And right now, all we're doing is diet changes, some mild diet changes. And then starting next weekend, I will have to start checking my blood sugar 4 times a day, which does give me anxiety, but the goal is to just keep baby healthy and make sure that she enters the world as safely as possible. So it's one of those things where it's a pain, but it is only for a temporary time. Like I said, we're like almost to week 30. So for 10 weeks, that's, 2 months. So the holidays are going to be interesting. But it is what it is. We're going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. But yeah, so I want to just talk to you guys about how that came about. If anybody has any questions about tips, tricks, what not to do, I'm now the poster child for what not to do before, during, and after your glucose tolerance test, because yeah, I feel like if I would have made some smarter choices, even leading up to that test, I might not be having this conversation, because to be honest, I haven't really ate much differently than I did before I was pregnant. Like, I've always been more of a carb eater, but I do balance it out with salads. I eat meat, I would say I eat meat once or twice a week, for dinner, and then sporadically through the week for lunch. So, am I a huge carnivore? No, but it's not that I'm a vegetarian. I just prefer carbs. They're just more pleasurable to me. So pastas, bread, and I don't even eat a lot of bread. Like, I don't eat a ton of sandwiches. It's pasta. Pasta is what gets me, and like oatmeal. And I eat a lot of fruit, which fruit has carbs. So it's all about balance and moderation. And I think we're going to be okay. I am sort of living in this state of almost denial, but I know everybody's just erring on the side of caution. You know, medically, they're erring on the side of caution for liability reasons, and health and safety. I mean, they'd rather treat me as if I have it than let it go untreated. And then for baby, we want to make sure that she's not too big, and that she is not at risk for further complications later on in her life. So that was it for today. Let me know if you decide to try my recipe for this. Again, this is what I call the original recipe of these, but there are lots of variations. I changed the recipe a little bit, and I am to the point now where I just dump things in. I don't really measure. There are some where people put M&Ms in them. I've seen them with cinnamon. I've seen them with dried fruit. I've seen them with raisins. All of these are ones that I keep telling myself that I want to try. I just haven't gotten around to it. But I almost always have the ingredients for these on hand to be able to make them whenever. So I'm going to put a couple of these in a baggie, head out to do my errand for the day. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about my diagnosis, how I plan to manage it, any tips and tricks for monitoring gestational diabetes if you were diagnosed with that, tips for like checking your blood sugar on your own at work, because that's something that is giving me a lot of anxiety, things to expect. And yeah, let me know if you decide to try these, and let me know your thoughts about all of it. And thank you for watching another episode of Kaitlyn's Shortcut Kitchen, with a little side topic about, maternity and pregnancy updates. So I hope you guys have a great weekend whenever you're watching this video. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you hit that red button and subscribe if you like these videos, and I'll see you guys next time.